Hi guys, we're going to start off with low carb how to. First off, what is it and why will it help me? Well, low carb means a lot of things. There's no specific level of carbohydrate intake that makes something low carb. To most, it just means that less of your calories will come from sugar, grains, starchy vegetables, and some fruit, and more by proportion from protein and fat. As a society, we eat way more carbs than we need. Unless you're extremely active every day, I mean like multiple hours of intense activity, carbs do not have to be a priority in your diet. In fact, those of us who exercise minimally really don't end up using much of our carb stores, glycogen, represented here as a beaker. So eating more carbs just ends up being stored as fat. And why top up already full stores? Honestly, recommendations for carb intakes are way too high for our population and may even be to blame for our high rates of chronic disease. When we eat low carb, our glycogen carb stores decrease because our bodies use it for energy. We also use fat called triglycerides that is circulating in our blood. And did you know that any extra protein we've consumed is also used for energy? We can absorb more than about 20 to 25 grams per sitting. So any extra, and we have to use it for energy, or it gets made into fat. All that to say that we have a lot of energy stores in our body, and by the time we're in nutritional ketosis, a couple days on low carb, we're fat adapted and use our fat stores to produce energy. Easy peasy, we're not starving our bodies. Our bodies are still producing some glucose from the protein we eat, so that fuels some of the specialized cells that use glucose only. And our brains and cells run on ketones for fuel, which are produced by the metabolism of our fat stores. Really, it's a beautiful, sciencey thing. So as long as you aren't participating in the next Tour de France, running marathons, or joining a professional hockey team, low carb is just fine and safe. Okay, back to the diet. Low carb itself can be anything you want it to be, but for the sake of this protein, we're going to set it at 50 to 100 grams of digestible carbs, or net carbs, or less per day. As you will see from the list of low carb foods that you'll get today, it can add up to a lot of food. And you will be eating a lot of food, but maybe not in the same makeup. Our food breaks down into three types of nutrients: carbs, protein, and fat. We call these macronutrients. Fiber, fluid, and vitamins and minerals are also needed, but these don't break down into energy. All foods have at least a little bit of natural carbs, protein, and fat, many of fiber as well. As you'd expect, grain products and starchy vegetables have the most amount of carbs, but they have a little protein, fat, and fiber too. Fruit is mostly made up of fiber and carbs with tiny amounts of fat and protein. Vegetables are mostly fiber with some carbs and tiny amounts of fat and protein. Animal proteins are mostly protein and fat with tiny amounts of carbs and no fiber. Plant proteins are made up of fiber, carbs, protein, and a little fat. And dairy is made up of protein, fat, and carbs with no fiber. On a low-carb diet, protein is eaten in normal amounts. Why people think low carb is high protein is beyond me. Too little protein in your body will eat its own muscle. Not good. Too much and it gets stored as fat. It's best to stay in your sweet spot. A common goal is for about 25 to 35% of your calorie intake as protein. It's a little too early to discuss your protein goals, so let's get through week 1 first. As I mentioned before, we're going to start by aiming between 50 and 100 grams of carbs per day, which ends up being slightly different, a different percent from person to person, but roughly it's around 15 to 20% of your calories. Finally, the remainder of the percent gives us our daily fat goals. Fat goals can range between 45 and 60%. Just with protein, we're going to wait a little before your fat goals are set. Any foods with fiber are a must on this diet. Firstly, because they're also typically high in antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, but they help to keep us regular, are very important for our gut health, and helps keep us fuller for longer. Depending on your age, your daily fiber goals are between 25 and 30 grams per day. To make sure we optimize fiber, antioxidants, and vitamin mineral intake, we're going to be eating a lot of beautiful vegetables and a little fruit. Now, some people may love that, and others are picky and hate vegetables or fruit. So if you fall into the latter category, please keep an open mind and try them again. The thing about low carb is that you get to put yummy, salty things all over your vegetables like cream and cream sauce, cheese, butter and garlic, and herb butter and spice blends. Don't worry, because the dog days are over. No more plain salad with dry, unseasoned chicken breast. It's not the 90s anymore. And believe me, you don't want to have carnivore poop. Have you ever run across some coyote poop in the woods? It's pretty nasty. They have to eat their own fur to stay regular. Do you want to have to do that? And look at this poor guy. He looks a little constipated. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get into the actual diet. This is going to be pretty simple, guys. All you need to do is pick your path. And this is what it looks like. Check it out in the next module and find out where you fit.